Yeah,
How are you today, Daniel?
I'm here too, my friend. I'm present. And I'm happy to be here and I'm grateful to be here. And what can we choose today that's going to be even more amazing and incredible than we could ever imagine, right?
Hmm, it's a great question. Yes, what could we choose?
Especially when talking about death and loss,
Mm,
right?
that's right. Yeah. And I wonder if it's weird, people, if you're having any reaction watching as we're like smiling and laughing, talking about death and loss,
Mhm.
but it's come up for me, for us. Um, it's been in the field of our lives, and it's always something that's present there, right? But I believe as a Western culture, we really are afraid of it and have a hard time dealing with
Yes,
it.
it's
And
true.
there's been some people and teachers and writings along the way that have really changed my life and how I thought about it. And
Right.
so I thought it'd be really great for us to just unpack it here today and see what comes up and see if there's anyone that, if you're listening today, please feel free to chime in and ask us anything. Tell us what's going on for you, or if you have any questions about it.
Yeah.
If this brings up challenging feelings, or you feel like you have something you'd really love to add, we would love to hear any and all of that.
Absolutely. The first thing that I think of when I start to go down the rabbit hole of death is,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I need to caveat that I know reincarnation to be true, right? So I've studied reincarnation for 25 years. I know reincarnation to be true, so death has a different awareness for me just from that point of view. But I want to share something. Um, so let's think about when a baby is born, right? And a baby is born into this lifetime. And a baby goes through this process just as the mother does, right? It goes through the pain, it goes through the anguish, it goes through the suffering, it goes through all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it comes out on the other side and it's like, wah, ah. And it comes screaming. And there's a half a dozen people in the room going, "Yay! Oh my God, we're so lucky. It's a boy, it's a girl.
Yeah.
Yay!" Right? Why don't we do that when somebody dies?
That's a great
Right?
question. Yeah.
Why don't we do that when somebody dies? Because what I know to be true, and again, what I know to be true from my experience is that my experience, my knowledge, my studying, my understanding is every time that there is death, there is also birth,
Mm-hmm.
right? Every time there is death, there is also life. And so, what if we celebrated that death was something that was the end of a cycle and we could go on to another one? Think about here's another great example, right? What about when somebody's worked for the same company for 40 years, right? And they're ready to retire and they're going to retirement and they've been thinking about retirement and retirement is heaven to them, right? Oh, can't wait to retire, can't wait to retire. All of a sudden the day comes to retire. The day comes to retire, not only do they get a party, they get a cake, they get a watch saying, "Thank you for your 40 years. How amazing is this?" And then they go and they retire, right? We celebrate them. We celebrate those 40 years that they had of service. We celebrate the 40 years they had that they now get to relax. They now get to, or maybe go on to another career, or they get to choose something else, right? So, why is it that we always freak out about death, right? I would love
That's a
to
great
ask you
question.
that question, Ben. I would love to ask you that question. All of us have dealt with death in some way, shape, or form, but I'd really love to start the dialogue with you, asking, what is the pain that exists with death
Hmm.
for you?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I Before I answer that, and I will answer that question, I love it. I want to just speak to a couple things you said about celebration,
Yes.
and well, I'll answer the question and integrate that. The So in the past, and even now, I guess the pain I experience around death is the best way I can explain it. Here we go into metaphor land. Is like um, when I've been in a play, and it's sort of like what you're talking about too. And when an actor goes into a production, you get to know these people. You work with them every day for months. You're finally doing, like, you are being paid to do what you love, and you are like really doing it, and you're doing it together, and this thing becomes alive, and then the production ends, and then everyone goes back to their lives, and maybe you stay in touch with people, and you're like, we're gonna be friends, and like, you usually don't see them again.
Yeah.
um
What a great analogy. Yeah.
and in that space, and for people, who are listening who aren't actors, like, we can stick with the retirement analogy, right? Like, the job is ended, you've made it, it's over, and then it kind of disperses, the energy disperses. And what I experience is depression. Like, you've had the button pushed, and now you let go.
Oh,
And when you let go, there's what I think some of us experience. What I experience is a
yeah.
void that person, that energy of the play, of the job, of the human in your life, that they really filled on this plane. And like, my father, who is one of the most challenging deaths for me, and also the most liberating. I think this is where I've grown so much. Losing him last year was that he was such a big personality, and he connected so many people. Like, to this day, I just went to see cousins I barely know in California, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we talk to your dad every week." And I'm like, "How the hell did this guy? How is he on the phone with it?" Like, there's
Yeah.
he's was in touch with hundreds of people. People came out of the woodwork at his funeral, like, "Oh, he was my biggest cheerleader. He was my biggest cheerleader. Really, he's my biggest." And I'm thinking, how did he stay connected to so many lives? And he also knew the family history. So when he left, it he was like a key to a lot of things, including connection and history. And so when that was no longer present for all of us, it was like, well, like, it was just, I think I can relate it as, um, I feel like if you're building a railroad track and suddenly you just move out a piece of the track,
Yeah.
and you have to keep going, and you're like, well, that's a pretty significant, that's like the changing station, but you have to create something new, and maybe you have to build new tracks from there, but you
Hmm.
keep going over those tracks, and you strengthen it, and you expand on it. So I think, I guess for me, the pain is really the absence of the immediate gratification and validation I feel, hear, and see, the immediate sensory experience I have of a loved one, of love, of joy. And when it's not immediately available, it feels, it's different. It shifts, right? The energy completely shifts. So for every action, there's a reaction. So you said for every life, there's a death. For every death, there's life.
Right.
And even for my family who struggled, myself included, with my father's passing, the last words out of his mouth, well, one of the last words before the morphine kicked in, was, "I am ready to die. Please let me go."
Wow.
And I was like, "No, I don't want you to." But he was so settled about it
Yeah.
that I knew he was just going. And I was shocked, because he's always been a liver, but like, someone that's like, "I'm gonna keep going here another
Sure.
10 years." We joked he was like a cat with like 15 lives, like you just couldn't take him out. And but he was so settled about it that it allowed me to be, like, just in awe. And I realized he's helped people die his whole life, and
Sure.
my father really was a pastor for that. And here he was like, yep, I'm ready. And 24 hours later, he was gone.
Right.
And I think he was just done. But I think that's so exciting that like he was like, I have, I'm like, and I, oh, here's the pain. Thank you for letting me think this out. The other thing is that he was ready to go, but I wasn't ready for him to go.
Yes,
So the
exactly.
pain was that I wanted to, like, I'm such a, touch is one of my love languages. So for my best friend who I get to touch and feel and smell and hear, it was such a source of comfort. So that being removed was like, well, I've had this blanket my whole life and now I just have to live without it, right? And the gift was, so that was the pain, was that a source of comfort seemingly just removed without my, I didn't get to, it felt like it wasn't on my terms,
Yeah,
right?
of
And
course.
so my work has been to choose it because it is what's so, and to ask what newly can I gain from this, right? Like how can I connect with my father in a new way, in an even greater way than when he was just here in person? Because the truth is, when he was here in person, when I wasn't with him, it was also painful because I knew he was here physically. When I was with him, I never knew, when he was going to go. We were always worried about him dying and falling again. So, there's, I forget about that stuff too, that now I get to carry him all the time. Um, but I think that pain for us can be, us not wanting these people, us not being ready, us not
Yeah.
choosing, thinking like it's someone else's choice. And we deny that.
Yes, of course.
We
What
say,
is,
no, that's not my truth. I want this person alive. My life
yeah,
sucks now.
I
Rather
can't live
than,
without them. What
yeah,
am I going to do without them? But it's the familiarity too, right? Like just what you
yeah,
said. I love that you equated the word comfort. Like
mm,
your father and everything that he represented was like your comfort blanket,
yeah.
right? And then you had that taken away from you. So I want to stick with that and I want to ask you this. What is your awareness now in this moment in these 10 seconds of your relationship with your father and where he is?
Mm. So my relationship now is that he is on a greater plane, that I
Mhm.
feel like we used to joke my dad's spirit was too big for his body. That's why he was so
Mhm.
clumsy. And so I feel like he's literally free of the body that was holding him back. And so I experience him as on this spiritual plane that's both above and also with me at all times, that I can source as a comfort, and I can communicate with him
Mhm.
now anytime. I can ask for guidance and source now at any time. I don't have to get him on the phone. He doesn't have to be in a good mood or
Right.
rested or strong. And I just feel like it's an infinite space now that that he gets to be in, that is
And
so much bigger.
amazing. And how do you communicate with him now?
Um, I talk to him out loud in my
Yeah.
head. I ask him to join me in my prayer and meditation sometimes. I ask him to surround me, to go with me places as an angel. And that really is a gift I got from another friend who passed away. I met him in recovery. He got sober at like 60 or 70 years old, which was ironic because he created the Absolute Vodka campaign. And
Wow.
he was really prolific advertiser, executive, but he was sober. And I met him in recovery, and he was one of the most sensitive guys I ever met. Like him and I were the criers in the group, and he's, at that point, he was in his 70s, and he would talk about like how he dealt with loss because all his friends were dying. And as we get older, the one thing we can count on is that we're going to continue to deal with this in a greater and greater numbers, right? So we can either continue to suffer or we could create something newly. And he said, every time I lose a friend or a loved one, when I meditate, I just invite them to come sit next to me.
Exactly. It
And I
reminds you that there's,
loved that. And I want to say one more thing,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
was
yeah,
in
of
this
course.
play I was in a really heavy play a few years ago, The Crusade of Connor Stevens, and it was very dark and very painful. Like we were talking about death a lot in the play, and um, there was murder and hate and a lot of it was a lot of heavy topics, and it was important. And how I went through it is actually I had a friend who had just committed suicide named Trip Poland, who was one of my best friends. And I also had a friend, Joey Boots, in recovery who had just overdosed. And I also had another friend in recovery. It's important that I say her name, Temi. She was like a 250-pound, 300-pound former prisoner that actually transitioned to a woman in prison, found recovery, found herself, and really got freed up, but had an overdose as well. And I was really felt some suffering from them not being around. And then I remembered what my buddy Arnie said. And so every night before the play started, I would invite the three of them to be with me in the production, to help be a source of comfort, to help bring the energy and emotional life I needed, and to help me do it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So I wasn't just like calling on the worst death of like my friend Trip like was suffering and he freed himself. All of these addicts, they were suffering and freed themselves. So as much as I miss them, like I also realized I could have a new relationship with them. And if whether you believe it or not, whatever you believe is going to be, your thoughts create your words, create your world, create your action. Your brain doesn't know the difference between perceived real or not. So if we are in the energy that we get to carry these people with us, what else would be possible?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's also getting to, I love what you said about really empathizing with those who have crossed over,
Mm.
right? I was working with um, a young man not too long ago, a year or so ago, because his family had insisted on him having a session with me.
Mm.
And he was an addict and he was pretty much in denial of
Mm.
his addiction. And every time that we would have a session, he would talk we would literally spend the whole session talking about the afterlife, right? About metaphysics, about the
Mm.
world beyond this one. And I could hear his soul speaking that this limitation, the limitations of this physical universe, this limitations of this physical body were really, really, really challenging for him. And that's why he turned to drugs and alcohol as a source of escape, because it
Mm.
allowed him to get out of his body.
Mm.
And as I worked with him and every time I talk to him, like I'm not a therapist, so that's not my job, and I'm not a recovery specialist. I'm a healer in essence, and I help people to find their space, to find their place of healing, whatever that means for them. And for this gentleman, it was really about connecting to the afterlife and
Mm.
really talking about and exploring about what that's like. And earlier this year, he overdosed,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And so the family kind of rallied around and they were like, "What happened?" And I said, and I felt his energy so presently. I said, "You guys,
Mm.
truthfully, he's been asking for this for years.
Mm.
He's been asking to get out of this body, to get out of this limitation, to be a part of the all that is, where he can be everywhere at the same time. He couldn't help the amount of people that he wanted to help in this lifetime. He couldn't help them, right? Because it was too limiting for him. And so that fear and that frustration and that hurt that he would take on himself, he didn't he didn't want to deal with it in this
Mm.
lifetime, right? He had all the
Mm.
tools. He didn't want to deal with it in this lifetime. He was
Mm.
so excited to go to the next life. And I have really, really connected to him on the other side since he's transitioned. And the amount of joy and the amount of glee and the amount of happiness that this energy is now, that is the one thing that always comes up when I'm working with his family is he always is communicating, please remind them I'm so happy now. I get
Mm.
to be at every single baseball game for your nephews and nieces. I get to go to every single soccer game. I get to have every single dinner with you guys. I get to be all places at once. That was
Mm.
his message to them. And it
Mm.
was such a message of freedom because It's all of a sudden it's not about, oh my God, my husband, my son, my brother, my this, my that died. I don't have that anymore. It's like, oh, that's what they chose,
Hmm.
right? That's what they chose.
Wow,
That's
I
what he
love that.
chose. How cool.
I
How cool
love
that
that.
he's actually happy now. Because
Mm.
if we really, really, truly were loving our those beings unconditionally, then we would allow them to choose whatever they want,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
And be and go through the grief of ourselves, right, Ben? Like you said, it's not about not allowing yourself to grieve. That's a seriously important part of the journey. But
hmm,
what if we could grieve with also the ability to let go and allow, you know,
yeah,
allow them the honor in the
yeah,
space that they get to choose that they're leaving,
yeah.
you know?
Yes, and thank you for saying that grief is an important emotion too, because that's what I sense we're really dealing with, especially in America. I don't know if you all know this, but we have all been through a trauma together globally in
Yeah,
the pandemic, and we have all experienced grief, whether you are aware of it or not. I
that's
believe
right.
every single person in the world in the last 2 years has experienced a global phenomenon of grief. And believe that everything we're dealing with, and war and the economy and mental health and climate change um, and government, is all a result of not dealing with our grief, not
Mm-hmm.
making space for our grief.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that's been revealed to me since my father passed is that grief, pain, is so beautiful, that it does not have to be a bad thing, that the human heart's ability to feel, no matter how painful it can be, is just as beautiful and important, could be, consider, as
Yeah.
love, as elation, as joy. That I came to know my own pain and grief around loss to be something beautiful, and that I've really experienced, and my heart has broken open this year, that it is, it's when we go to the gym, we get stronger because we're tearing muscles, and then they get inflamed and they heal stronger.
Right.
So for me, loss and things like that is like tearing at the heart, and it's like it really hurts, but actually our hearts get so much bigger and stronger.
Yeah.
And um, I've really experienced that this year. My heart is so much more open, and losing parents, losing people dying is such a part of our life that, I think we know, we're like, oh no, it's the inevitable. But
Yeah.
what if we could actually embrace it and prepare for it? And um, you know, there's one other thing you mentioned about the what was the man's name who had overdosed or
Let's
properly.
let's not mention
Okay, we'll
names.
leave it
I
out.
didn't
Okay, cool.
mention names.
All right, yeah, yeah. I just wanted to honor him.
Yeah.
So I'm honoring him right now. And I've talked to a lot of guys, a lot of people this year who have struggled with suicidal ideation. Not struggled with, it's just part of their life. I have a lot of clients who are bipolar, and a lot of friends who have taken their lives as a result of mental illness, or, but I also wonder, most of these people, I used to, my grandfather committed suicide, and um, my mom was so angry. So I used to think suicide was really selfish. And most people say, "How dare you?" Because everyone else that is alive today has to suffer. Well, we each have a choice, and if we have the awareness that we have our life, and it's our life, and we can do with it what we want, who are we to say we have no idea what people are dealing with, and the amount of suffering and pain that some people experience, we may never be able to wrap our heads around.
Mhm. That's
And
right.
so these people leaving this world, and I'm not saying suicide is an answer, but we have to honor their choices. And rather than making them wrong, could we honor and ask, like, man, they must have been in this pain to need to, or want to numb out or want to leave. And rather than making it wrong and stigmatizing suicide more, could we actually talk about like the strength it takes,
That's right.
the courage it takes? And it doesn't have to be the answer. There is help if you want it. And, in a lot of cultures and certain countries, it's, you can euthanize yourself. You can choose when you want your life to end. My wife Cassie also often says, like, I really watching old people suffer. Like, I do not. I would really like the option to take myself out. And even the word committing suicide is like a crime, right? So my sister brought that up to me yesterday, and she said, I heard someone say death by suicide. And I was like, okay, it's a little better for me. Like, it's not committing. It's just, it is what it is. Like, that's how they
Hmm.
died. And and that uh for some people too, that oh, I'm about to lose this,
Choosing
that
death.
yeah, that it can be a celebration. And
Yes.
I like that you said that. And the one other thing that came up yesterday as I was thinking about this topic was this movie Midsommar. And it's a pretty intense film. It's an indie art film, but it's about this population of people, this group, cult, if you will, whatever you want to call it, a tribe. And when they reach a certain age, like I think it's like 60 or something, they walk to the they end their lives, and they go have this big celebration, and they all watch everyone end their lives, and they like step off a cliff, and everyone cheers, and they're like, yes. And these people are visiting the tribe, and they're like, what, this is so messed up. And they try to like get in the way, and the tribe's like, no, this is, we are so settled with this. We choose this. We come in this life, we believe we are going to another place, and they celebrate. So to bring it all the way back, I loved your idea that, what if we celebrated people when they passed over?
Yes.
And could we continue to celebrate that? I mean, our
Yeah.
human suffering is our ego, I think, trying, just wanting something to be the same. But if there's one thing we can count on in life, is change. Nothing ever stays the same.
Right. There's actually the ancient Buddhist monks. Don't quote me. I don't know that they do it now. I think they do, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know that the ancient Buddhist monks, when they were ready to die, they would literally just go into the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And they would walk into the forest, and they would lie down in the ground and cover themselves and put themselves into a really, 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 really deep meditation. And then they would transition. And I remember the first time I read that. I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh, who I actually had heard that from, about, he was talking about death.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, what a beautiful thing to recognize and to choose in every way, shape, and form, when it's your your choice. It's your choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's your choice, and nobody else's choice. Nobody else can say, you know, stay here, stay here, stay here. Um, and to have that ability to be able to be so aligned with being at peace also with that choice, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thich Nhat Hanh is the first teacher I heard talk about death.
He's
And
amazing.
yeah, that was a really helpful resource for that. And I also want to mention here, this has come up. Our producer and friend Becky has mentioned a celebration of life for her niece. And so I just want to honor you and your niece, Becky, and your family. And talking about this stuff doesn't necessarily make it easier, but I want to see what we could create newly, if we can choose something greater, and if we could choose to try to understand rather than condone,
Yeah.
and to
And I
try to
love,
even understand, like, hi Jason, I see you here, like,
exactly.
what can
Yeah.
you learn from your mom not being here
Right.
physically? Like, what can be revealed now? What is the, my sister said this great thing the other day, like, now that my mom's kind of declining, like she said, we're just closer to the void. You know, it's like one step. Your parents are like a buffer almost, is what she said. And then when they're gone, it's like, oh, it's just me and the void now. You know, there's no like, which I
That
thought was
sounds like an episode of Stranger Things.
yeah, right.
The underside.
Yeah, like we're next, you know. But also there's like, and some of my family members are experiencing that now. Like, oh man, we're the elders now. Holy shit! Like, oh my
Yeah.
god, it's
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
Oh no!
totally.
Like, but then that, what a beautiful thing to step into, like to get to honor my father and carry a torch for him. And there's a young woman I met on an airplane last week, and she was a Marine. She's 25 years old and active duty. And before we even took off, I was like, "Oh, so are you flying home?" And she was like, "Nope, I'm going to see my boyfriend who just died in a car accident. I'm going to a funeral." And whoa, okay. And I immediately got the message from Creator that I'm here to be with this woman. And we talked. I was like, I was respectful and also like, would you like to talk about this? You know, is this good? And she just opened up and she said she hadn't smiled all week. This is the first time she hadn't cried, and it was kind of like she didn't know how to be with it, because we were creating new possibilities for her partner. Like she was about to move into a new home with him in Florida and move across the country, and he had just gotten restationed there, and like she had a direct path for the first time in her life, and then that was totally taken away. Now what?
Right.
Right? And I asked her about, I had this sense that she kept people at bay and that she was a big caretaker, and sure enough, like caretaker of her mom, caretaker of all these other people, like lots of addiction and stuff in her family, and she has been the one that's always been there for everybody else. So I said, it sounds like you're getting practice being supported and asking for help and letting other people be there for you. And she goes,
Hmm.
yes. Oh my god, I'm such a control freak. It's so uncomfortable for me right now.
Yeah.
And I said, wow, it's so beautiful. Like, what great awareness, you know?
Yeah.
And could you, like, it's really going to suck for you maybe to lose this person that you've been talking to every day and planning a life with. But, like,
Hmm.
what is he here to do? Like, what can you take from him now? How can you carry that into the world? Like, the best parts of him. And, like, if he was to integrate into you, how would you live your life now that you get to carry him with you? And and the other thing I said is, and don't forget to make space this week to go be angry and rage. And
Yeah.
she was like, started shaking. She's like, yeah, I'm still pretty pissed. I'm like, yeah, that's good. That's healthy. Like,
Yeah.
go feel that. Like, all of those things are important. Like, please make space for yourself this week to feel that. To which we got in a whole nother conversation about how in the military they're really just taught over and over and over to shove it down. The mission comes first. And she was even surprised that she was given the time off to get to grieve, because often the mission comes first and they say deal with it later. So the other great thing is she may be giving the military a gift as well. And people in the military also are starting to say, listen, I know like the mission comes first, but take another week off, go home, like stay there.
Yeah.
And so she's, you know, now the military starting to bring in wellness experts, coaches, healers. Maybe there's something to this. Like maybe we can be
Exactly.
great at our job and take care of our emotional
That's
life.
right. And offer another solution, you
Yeah.
know. And I think that's what you and I have done here today, Ben. And that's what I hope that we've done today is really created a space of possibility around this particular subject where we can kind of look and say, okay, even though I'm processing and feeling these things, maybe there's more here that I don't know.
Mm.
Maybe there's more healing, more happiness, more joy here than I don't know. And Ben and I always, always, always want everyone who's listening, past, present, and future, we want you to know that this is not a space of a right or wrong or a good or a bad. This is a space of allowance. And so
Mm.
we honor all of you wherever you are at with this process. And also, in honoring of that, we also share where we are at too.
Hmm.
And so we thank you. We thank you for going on this journey with us, and going on this journey with us and really being a part of this conversation. We feel your energy.
Hmm.
And I thank you, Jason, for contributing and sharing. And I'm going to go as far as to say I feel your mom,
Hmm.
and she's really happy that you're here as well. And I feel her light and her joy and her excitement, and she feels like she loved to cook. She had something with food, like she wants to give us food, and she's like inviting us to the table to enjoy food. So thanks, mom. And you're always happy, Jason, because look, that's the way the creator created us, always happy, right? And we get the chance and the opportunity to remember that, to
Hmm.
remember that everything is a choice in this universe. The happiness, the love, the joy, the satisfaction, everything. And
Hmm.
so, how much more of that can we choose?
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Daniel, and thank you everyone listening who's contributed, watched, past, present, future, commented. Really, your
Yes.
comments and you sharing this makes a huge difference for spreading this medicine. If you believe in what you heard today, if it's helpful, please don't keep it to yourself. Please share this with other people in your life. You can subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, and I would love to just mention a couple of resources. Daniel, I know I wonder if you have there's any books or resources that you might recommend to anyone who would like to go a little bit deeper into this.
Yes. For me, the book that changed my life when it came to this is called Many Lives, Many Masters, and it is by Dr. Brian Weiss. And Dr. Brian Weiss or he is, I should say, a clinical therapist, and he was working with a client and couldn't find any solutions for her, and then started hypnosis on her. And what was revealed was really, really, really incredible. So I encourage you to read the book, and it will provide an awareness for you about what reincarnation is, and about the possibilities that exist beyond this lifetime, and why we have and hold on to and carry so much of our stuff in this lifetime. And so that has always been a resource that I always suggest to people. So please enjoy it, read it. All of Dr. Weiss's books are phenomenal. Yeah. Yes, such a great book. Hmm.
Wait, I'm muted here. So I put the other one,
What
No Death,
happened?
No Fear, about how to embrace it, and embrace death by Thich Nhat Hanh. Oh, I was muted here on our podcast, so I'm just making
Oh,
sure people get it.
okay.
Everyone on Instagram heard it like 6 times, so thank you for joining us.
Guys, thank you so much. Ben, thank you so much. And many blessings to each and every one of us. Have a wonderful day, and allow us to feel the energy of those who are on the other side, to know that they're really as much here as they've ever been, if not more. And
Mm,
so enjoy them today, right? They want to come through, and they want you to feel their love, and they want you to feel their support and their passion. I'm getting so emotional because they're like, yeah, go tell them, tell them, tell them. Okay, okay, okay. So sit today with those that you've lost, and have a conversation with them, and recognize and realize that they're still here with you.
mm.
Okay?
Well, that's great. Thank you all so much. We'll see
Thank
you
you, guys.
next week.
Yes.
Thank. Bye.